Hey, what is up, everyone? And we are back for another episode of Chesslemania. So, this episode will be our final game before we get our first official rating on chess.com. So, let's hop right into it. Let's see if we can get a 4 win out of 5 for our rating determination. And then, if we're lucky, we'll even get black and we can play the Caro Kann. So, let's see if he does e4. So, he does e4. We will do the Caro Kann, and if we are lucky, we will be able to I will be able to show you the ancient Shadow Garden technique. This is a new opening line that nobody has played. There's only been one kind of like sort of play that's been done on the professional level for it. Let's see if he takes this pawn. If he takes the pawn, then we can do the opening that I've teased for so long already. So he does not take the pawn, unfortunately. So we have to wait on the opening line that happens in the Caro-Kann exchange variation. So usually when you do the Caro-Kann and they move the knight out in order to support them capturing this pawn back, what you want to do is you want to take the pawn and then you want to immediately attack the knight. So what this does is that he will move his knight over here and then you will move your bishop backwards. And he might be able to eventually capture this bishop on this square right here, but if you capture with the pawn that's over your rook, it's actually not a bad capture, because usually you want to avoid double pawns, but with freeing up this rook here and then also the structure of the 3 pawns on the king side right here, it's very difficult for the enemy to kind of like punish that sort of double pawn structure as long as you haven't castled yet. So with this, I think the best move is to free up my dark square bishop, because then his knight can't go here without having any sort of problems, because then I am actually, you know what? I could have even just captured that free pawn. So, yeah, I'm still learning at the game, so you have to forgive me. I'm a beginner at this game, but I just know kind of like some basic ideas from the instruction manual that I read. So, now that they haven't seen this mistake themselves, I think I'll go ahead and capture this and see how they react. They might panic and give me something more substantial. Usually when it comes to advantages in games, if you are at like, a 2000 level and above, a 1 pawn advantage is enough to convert a win. But I think anything below 2000, it's like there's definitely an ability for the opponent to capture back material if you're only 1 pawn above. So if we get a minor piece of advantage, then I'll feel a lot better about it. So with this, I think that the best move is to just retreat the queen back again. So let's see if there's any problems with this. There doesn't seem to be, because if I move my queen back and he moves his knight, it'll still be protected by the bishop. And then if he moves the knight, I can also just trade the bishops, the light squared bishops like this. So I don't want to fall into any more attacks. I don't want to complicate it by going here and try to attack this dark square pawn weakness that he might have. So I'll just go ahead and pull my queen back. Now, I think that's a pretty solid, very measured move to do, although it may not be the most optimal. Now, what we might want is, if we can get a couple more pieces into the center of the board here, we may want to consider some sort of attack earlier than we usually would. But it really depends on the playing strength of my opponent. It's possible that he just missed that particular pawn capture, but beyond that, there won't be any kind of like exploitable weakness. So he's being very aggressive by putting this queen out early. I think that just pulling my bishop back a little bit reinforces this square. Uh, I think that is the right move, is to just move the bishop back, and then if I need to, I can just capture with this pawn if the bishop goes under attack. So I'll go ahead and continue with that plan. And then also, he's kind of leaving me a opportunity to still develop my knight on f6, which is usually a square that you don't want your opponent to be able to freely move their knight on in the Caro-Kann, as long as it's like a more closed variation of it. So I think that I will actually go ahead and put my knight here to try to trade down material a little bit. I have 1, 2 defenders, and he has 1, 2, 3 attackers. So this ended up being like a little bit of a blunder, possibly. I believe this is a blunder. So he probably would be able to take this knight, for very little trading. I believe him. Huh. The issue with this is that I can redirect the queen because if I capture. No, no, because if I capture this knight, he still can capture my queen with his rook and it'll be check, so I need to spin a move capturing the queen back. So I think what's actually a better move is to threaten to attack this weak pawn right here while also attacking the light squared bishop. But this person is playing very, very aggressive. I mean, it's what? Uh, guys, I think I I think I might lose this game, man. This is crazy. This is probably the worst I've ever played. You know what they say, sometimes they bring you down to their level. So I'll just go ahead and recapture and see if we can maybe make it back in the second half. But I mean already this person has been playing hyper aggressively. He seems to have a decent coordination of his pieces. I mean, this it might have I might be just be toast simply in this game. So what I'm thinking that he might do is he might just do a simple developing move to connect these rooks, and then he would be able to continue the attack by doubling the rooks on this file. It's a very common attacking trope in that once you have more development than your opponent, or once you have, your development almost finished, you want to connect the rooks, and then when possible, you want to take an open file like this with two rooks. So he might be able to hang a piece though, if I'm lucky, and then if he hangs one piece, then I think that it won't be too difficult. Although this queen might still be a problem, but I think if we can only be 2 points down in material, I think we'll have fighting chances. So he immediately attacks with his rook, and I believe I have to move this king, and then he'll probably move the queen here to check me, and then that might actually be checkmate. I think that is checkmate. If he finds it. If he finds it, it's checkmate. Oh, wait. Is not checkmate? But it is checkmate. I can only do this. All right. GG, guys. All right. So what is our final rating? 602? All right, guys. Y'all saw it here first. 602 rating. Um, we tried our best. So let's go ahead and do our first with rating 10-minute rapid game to try to get more practice in or something like that. And then maybe if I'm lucky, then I can show y'all the technique again. Nope. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and play something called the King's Indian Defense. Usually when your opponent plays d4, you can pretty much always play this setup. So what you want to do is you want to bring your knight out early, and then you want to kind of fianchetto this bishop. Basically make a little house for your bishop. But if they play an e4 move, you want to immediately play d6 to prevent them from attacking your knight too quickly. And then I believe I can do this, and then if he takes back, then I can do that. And then I can take the center better, more efficiently. I mean, I can just go ahead and try to attack the pawn with this. But then he might ruin my pawn structure. So I think this is the better decision. Although I've never had this setup happen before. I think what I will do is I would rather hurt his pawn structure and then immediately try to look kebab, one pawn, two pawn, and the rook right here. So this is very decent for me. And then I can try to put more pressure on this pawn, and then he might move his bishop here to try to help defend it. He does not. He wants to double my pawns instead, and he's giving me a pin. So I think what I would do is I will help defend this pawn, and then I will try to move my pawn up here to try to kick away his bishop. So he did not do that, but I think his pawn structure is weaker than mine, but he seems to desperately be trying to trade down a material as soon as possible so that he can, not have too much of a disadvantage. But you see, I'm going to have my rook at an open file before his by a pretty large margin. And I think I would prefer to have the bishop pair. So what I would like to do is to put my bishop here to attack him. And then he'll probably move his rook. And then when that happens, I would like to move my bishop here. To attack this pawn, and then he'll try to probably defend that pawn. But I think I don't even need to protect this. So I think I'll just go ahead and take this free pawn and prevent his rook from developing. And then when he plays the knight taking the bishop, I can have this tactic right here. And this wins a rook. I mean, I'm still like, it's like two minor pieces for a rook and a pawn. It's like an equal trade, but it's certainly not bad considering considering that I'm already up in material. It's like, not super disturbing to me. So he'll probably take with the knight now, and then I can immediately start doubling my rooks. Now, do I want to double in this direction or this direction? Because this is a problem that people usually experience in the maybe 800 range on ELO, is that they will find the right move in that they will try to take an open file with a rook, but they will choose the wrong rook to take the open file with. So it's worth thinking about here. These pawns are generally more protected and they have the protection of the king. So even though there's a lone pawn right here, it's probably better to take this rook and take the file with this rook and then try to slide it up and then put this rook over. And I believe that is the correct choice, because even if he moves his own rook down, like I have pretty good defenses with pawn e6. So now what I would like to do is I would like to do something called a rook lift, which is when you put your rook further along the file, so then you can double it. And once you double it, you have a very powerful attacking weapon against, the king, against their position. You can infiltrate their 7th rank or the 2nd rank in this scenario. What he might be thinking about is doing knight here so that he can both threaten a pawn and threaten taking my rook if I move my rook too far forward. I don't want to be in any area where his knight might take my pieces. So the best decision is probably to either go here or to go here. I think either of these two squares is better for me to put my rook on. Let's see, if I go here, he can threaten this pawn, but I would be able to take. So he just can't move forward with that. So this blocks out the knight indirectly. So that's how you know that this is the right square to put the rook on. Because not only is it a safe square, but you're also indirectly denying your opponent space on that side of the board, or denying their pieces from moving forward and creating some sort of like opposition or counter threat. So now I'll just go ahead and comfortably double my rooks. And then the only thing I need to do is to push this pawn forward in order to kick the knight away, and then I can take this piece for free. So he has this lone pawn that he's trying to push as kind of like his final hope, but I think if I counter push this pawn up here, then he will eventually have to move his knight, and then once he moves the knight, then I can grab his bishop will be hanging. So let's see how he deals with this. I think that one of the things you can maybe do is you can do counterplay by moving your rook down here, but he did not do that. So I'll just go ahead and kick the knight. And then once he kicks the knight, I think we will be able to win the game pretty easily, pretty handily. Because the knight has nowhere else to go except backwards. And once it moves backwards, it is no longer defending this piece, which I have doubled rooks, eyeing the square. So this is a pretty clean example of maybe how to go from 600, 700, 800 range to something a little bit higher, is knowing proper rook placement once you simplify down. And in games, if you know what the right rook moves are, which is not super complicated, though not always super intuitive, then you will win in the end game like 90% of the time against your opponent. So now what you want to do is you want to basically deny your enemy space by, moving the rook sideways, and you want to do the same process, but have your rooks on their second rank. So on their second, row, you will have your rooks so you can just gobble up as many pawns as possible. So with this, I think the smartest move is here. So the knight can only go here in order to develop anywhere, because now it can't go here, it can't go here, it can't go here. It only has one safe square. So the only opposition that the opponent has is maybe to try to create counterplay after this, but once you double up the rooks, it's pretty much over. So now I can develop this, and now all of this, this pawn is basically a freebie, but then also I can see what kind of checks I might have against the king. And something I could have played is pinning the knight against the king. So then the knight cannot move anywhere, and it takes the time for the rook to move. So I can just go ahead and grab a pawn if I need to as well. So I'll go ahead and grab this pawn just to be, safe on material wise, because if I'm up in material, even if I make some sort of mistake, it won't be too bad. And then now I will double up the rook again so that I can have, some sort of like threat checks. As long as this square, I cannot go on this square because the knight's protecting it. But, in other... And then we have checkmate. So there you go. That's a pretty textbook example of how you can manipulate rook endgames to work in your favor, even with, relatively equal material starting points once you simplify down. So let's see what the accuracy is on this game.
You had a tactical find this game. Now we're cooking. Let's review.
82.5% accuracy against my opponent's 65. I had one mistake.
Your better option was to attack the knight with your better option was to attack the knight with a pawn.
A rook for 2 minor pieces was
Taking
apparently
you snagged that they're cooking with the strongest move available. But, this is the only good move. Forced finishing the trade with that recapture. It happens.
It's not too bad.
You had a tactical find this game. But now we're cooking. Let's review.
We did a pretty good. We did a pretty nice clean game on that second one. So I'm so happy, guys. We're already at 650 ELO rating after getting initially judged at 600. So I mean, this is progress at work here. So follow my tips. If you find anything interesting, let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and yeah, have a fantastic day.